question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. MashaAllah, today is the 10th of Ramadan, the 10th day. Inshallah, all of you guys are fasting and keeping well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all your deeds and all your fasts. And furthermore, the 10th of Ramadan marks the tragic demise of Sayyidah Khadija, salamun alayha. We'd like to send our condolences to the Imam of our time. May Allah hasten his reappearance. And also to the Muslim Ummah on this occasion, on the death anniversary of the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, Sayyidah Khadija salamun alayha. Sayyidah Khadija was arguably one of the most important financial figures when it comes to the Islamic revolution that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi began in Mecca back then. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi says himself that if it wasn't for the mal of Sayyidah Khadija and the safe, the sword of Imam Ali, then he would not have been victorious with his mission to bring Islam to Mecca. Sayyidah Khadija was from an honorable background of Tawheed, from her father Khuwaylid or Khalid, as some say, a monotheistic background, and a lady who inherited her father's business. MashaAllah, the business was with regards to trade and camels. Now, as you are well aware, merchantry and trading was very, very thrive in Mecca. Many would need camels to go towards the north, towards Syria, the south towards Yemen, and also towards west towards Africa and so forth, in order to bring back goods to sell. A lot of these traders would go to Sayyidah Khadija to borrow and rent camels from her. I think she owned at least 80% or over 80% of the camels which were trading within Mecca and going back and forth. This is where her wealth came, and this is how she managed to financially support the Islamic movement back with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. But a time came when the Meccans began to boycott, ostracize, and also place sanctions upon the Muslim community. Many weren't allowed to discuss and talk to them. Many weren't allowed to even, marry their spouses, or the spouses marry their daughters or sons towards the Muslim community, nor were they allowed to even trade. If they were to trade, then the Muslim was to pay 10, 15, even sometimes 20 times more than the price. With the wealth of Sayyidah Khadija, she enabled and allowed this Muslim community, under the sanctions, to still purchase some sort of food and some sort of necessities in order to continue living in the valley of Abu Talib. However, it wasn't enough, and there was very, very hard, severe times in the valley of Abu Talib for the Muslim community. So much that she in turn became ill due to the malnourishment and left this world. It was so difficult and so poor for those living in the valley of Abu Talib that even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi didn't even have a shroud to bury Sayyidah Khadija with. And Hazrat Jibreel from the heavens brought a shroud for Sayyidah Khadija. Inshallah, I know that the mosques are still closed, and we are in very, very difficult times with COVID, but inshallah, please, brothers and sisters, do whatever you can to attend, listen to a majalis of Sayyidah Khadija, and also please pay your respects and remember her in your du'as, inshallah. Just a quick reminder that this is a live show. We do take in all your questions. If you have any questions, please send them in via the WhatsApp, the email address, or call us on 0203 515 0199. Inshallah, myself and the Sheikh will be able to discuss and answer your questions. I'm your host, Mohsin Shah, and joining me is Sheikh Ali Maash. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you this evening?
Alhamdulillah, fine.
MashaAllah. Sheikhna, let us begin. How shall we invoke Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this blessed month? And are there any specific times for supplication?
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. And the prophetic sermon with regards to the month of Ramadan, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he mentions and answers the question that you've just asked with regards to the supplication and invoking Allah Azza wa Jal. He says, وارفعوا إليه أيديكم بالدعاء في أوقات صلاتكم فإنها أفضل الساعات. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions that and raise your hands to Allah Azza wa Jal for supplication, for dua during the times of the salah. فإنها أفضل الساعات. In other words, the best time for the one who is fasting, the one who is in this holy month of Ramadan, to invoke Allah Azza wa Jal, the best time is in the time of salah. Now in the qunut, after salah, for example, anyhow, it should be in the time of salah, during the time of salah, that the one invokes Allah Azza wa Jal. فإنها أفضل الساعات. It is the best time for offering the dua and asking Allah Azza wa Jal for the hajat. So if we can take this opportunity and bring any haja we have in this holy month to recite it, let's say after Salat al-Maghrib and Isha, for example, during the qunut, for example, the most important dua is to ask Allah for تعجل فرج إمام الزمان عجل الله فرجه الشريف ونحن معه إن شاء الله. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jal sincerely, as mentioned in the beginning of the sermon, with sincere hearts, and be able to fast this holy month with ikhlas and to recite verses of the Quran as well.
MashaAllah. Shaykhna, when fasting, the inhaler that we use, especially asthmatics, they use an inhaler. Does this invalidate the fast?
Inhalers for asthma basically seems to be that they are the type of very thin dust.
Mm-hmm.
They're not part of the, or gas, for example.
Yes.
Very thin, so they're not considered to be as thick dust
Okay.
and such like. So seems to be they are allowed.
Mm-hmm.
But if one discovers this specific medication which requires the one to inhale thick dust, then that's a problem. But this is just the gas or small particles of gas possibly, that should be fine. Going back to the topic of the dua and invoking Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah states in His holy book, Quran al-Kareem, in Surah 40, verse 60, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Allah Azza wa Jal states that Allah says that invoke me, I will respond to you. Allah Azza wa Jal is there always to respond to the one who asks Him, who begs Him. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves this, as we understand from what has been mentioned, that He wants you to beg Him, to ask Him. You know, sometimes we ask people for our hajat. Let's say you go to a wealthy individual, to somebody who can sign for you the documents in some kind of positions, posts he has. But if you go two times, 3 times to borrow money, for example, they get annoyed in some stages. But Allah Azza wa Jal would love this, that you come back to Allah Azza wa Jal every time for your hajat, for your difficulties. So the best time is in this holy month and in the time of Salah.
I see, excellent. Shaykhna, vomiting, we've discussed this before. Vomiting can, depending on the circumstances, invalidate the fast. But what if one is ill, suffers from an illness, and they know that they're going to throw up because of their illness, but do they still keep the fast? And also, what if one, inadvertently vomits? Then is the fast still valid? Do they continue? Do they have to make it back?
Well, the first part of the question is about vomiting, in terms of being ill, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You have no choice, you have to don't vomit, for example. In this situation, yes, the fast would be invalidated, batil,
Okay.
but there's no kafara to pay for it. So when the fast becomes batil, it means that you have to make it up later,
Okay.
after the holy month. However, in terms of the one who vomited unintentionally, without any purpose, without illness and so forth, it just happened, then his fast is in order. He can continue his fast.
Carries on.
Carries on his fast, and there's no issue with it. Back to the topic of invoking Allah Azza wa Jal and asking Allah for the dua in this holy month, in the time of Salah specifically. The rest of the sermon, he says sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, ينظر الله عز وجل فيها بالرحمة إلى عباده. In this time of Salah, when one invokes Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah would look at this individual with mercy to his slaves, his servants. يجيبهم إذا ناجوه. He would answer them if they whisper to him and silently ask him. ويلبيهم إذا نادوه. And he would answer them if they call him. So it's like saying Ya Allah, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi. Allah would answer. ويعطيهم إذا سألوه. And he would give them if they ask. ويستجيب لهم إذا دعوه. And he would fulfill their needs if they do dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. And we have this in this dua, in which the blessed dua, in which we recite it every night after iftar, dua al-iftitah. There's 2 or 3 lines from this dua in which encourage us to ask Allah Azza wa Jal. In the dua we say, Allahumma adhinta li fi du'aika wa mas'alatik. Oh Allah, you have permitted me to pray and invoke you and ask you. A great means of blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal, that we can say Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi. Allah allowed us to say Ya Allah. By itself it requires praises and hamd. Like alhamd Ya Rabbi. That we can say Ya Allah. That we can invoke Allah Azza wa Jal with His names, Ya Sami'u, Ya Alim, and to the rest of the names of Allah Azza wa Jal. That we can ask Allah Azza wa Jal with His permission. فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي. Oh Allah, listen, O all hearing, Sami', all hearing, without any means of hearing. Don't forget. Even when we say Ya Allah, we raise our hands, it doesn't mean that Allah is up there. Na'udhu billah. ليس كمثله شيء. Nothing is like Allah Azza wa Jal. He's not part of the creation. Because if we say that He's up there, then basically we have limited Allah Azza wa Jal in a certain location, and we can't.
Yes.
We can't do this.
Indeed.
Yes, the blessings come from the heavens, of course, and from the arsh, from other places. Allah knows from where. The blessing comes from the arsh, from the heavens to the earth, and that's why we ask Allah Azza wa Jal. But Allah is not in a place. لا يعين بعين. فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي. And reply my prayer, O all merciful. I have حوائج, I have حاجات in which I want you, O the merciful, to respond to me. وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. And overlook my slips. I have wrongdoings, mistakes. على كل حال, things happen in my life in which I need the all forgiver, the one who forgives all my sins, in which that I live this holy month inshallah by the 8th time, and there's no sins in my book, all been erased and deleted and wiped, to be like born as a new human being on the day of Eid. And inshallah we come to the Eid. There's hadith to regards about the Eid. What does Eid means? Inshallah I'll mention them
Inshallah.
later.
Shaykhna, if one quotes something from the word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or from the Prophet, or one of the ma'soom imams with the belief that it was correct, but then it becomes evident to him that the ascription to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Prophet or the imam was not true, would this invalidate the fast?
He didn't said this deliberately to lie.
I mean, he was under the impression it was correct.
Exactly. Then his fast is valid. There's no issue with it.
Okay.
I mean, such an individual sometimes narrates the hadith from a source and it comes out. It's not a Shi'i source. Mistakenly. He didn't mean to. It happens, sometimes you have, let's say we have two Tabari names. One Tabari Shi'i, one Tabari non-Shi'i, for example. So things happen that you might get the hadith from the wrong source.
Okay.
And you quote it as a Shi'i source, as a correct hadith. So if such mistakes happen, then it doesn't invalidate the fast. Otherwise, if somebody ascribes lies to Allah or the Messenger of Islam or the Imams of Ahlulbayt alayhim as-salam, then his fast would be invalid and batil. So we have to be careful when we narrate a hadith, and that's why we try to bring the hadith itself in Arabic and English and try to read out just to avoid reciting wrong hadith or mistakes.
So quick reminder to all our viewers that this is a live show. We do take in your questions. So if you have any questions, send it in via the WhatsApp, the email address, or give us a call 0203 515 0199. Inshallah, we'll be able to discuss and answer your questions. Speaking of which, Sheikh, now one of our viewers has sent in a question, and that is, would the fast of a person invalidate if they swallow the mucus that's from the head or from the chest? So normally from the sinuses, I believe, you get mucus.
I mean, there's no issue with it if it doesn't reach the space of the mouth. That's the problem. When it reaches, the one should throw it out from the mouth. So there's no issue with swallowing unless it reaches the area of the mouth. Then the one should, as a precaution, as a mandatory precaution, to throw it out.
Sheikhna, we discussed this a couple of days ago in regards to invalidating invalidators of the fast. One is to immerse your head fully into water. Now, what if one accidentally slips into the river or swimming pool or something like that? What about if one forgot that they were fasting and immersed their head in the water? Maybe they went to the beach or something and they went swimming and they forgot that they were fasting. They immersed their head in the water. The fast, is it still valid or is it batil now?
No, his fast is not invalidated. I mean, it wasn't with purpose, deliberate. I mean, suddenly he fall into the pool, for example. It wouldn't break the fast. The one that breaks the fast is the intentional, with purpose, to dive inside the water. Of course, this opinion, some ulama would not accept it, so they would not consider this. In other words, to dive, immerse your head inside the water, the full head inside the water would break the fast. So it depends on the marja you follow. But in overall, the ulama would mention that this is part of the mubtalat of the siyam.
Sheikhna, if I declare the amount of abandoned money that I have found, how can I be sure that the liars do not claim it, even through false oaths? What if two people swore that it was their money? I'm a muqallid of Ayatollah Sayyid Sa'id Hakim.
The Sayyid mentions that one should supposedly try to basically declare this found item in public, ala kulli hal, and the person who comes forward and claims to be the owner of the found item should also show some kind of details, give the details of the found item. Let's say they found a necklace, gold necklace, for example. This individual, he or she should give some kind of description to this necklace, for example, golden necklace. How does it look, for example, in terms of the shape and so forth. Other items similar, alike. So in this way that one can, with confidence, give it back to its owner, original owner. So, the one should be careful with this situation, because many people would come forward and claim that it's ours, but it ends up that they try to deceive the individual to take this.
Sheikh, another question for one of our viewers, and that is, if a man finds anything, does he need to pick it? Say again, Ayatollah Sayyid Sa'id Hakim has an opinion on this. What does he say?
The Sayyid mentions that it is not obligatory to pick it up. It's not wajib for you to pick up whatever you find on the floor. A watch, I don't know, wallet, for example. Wajib for you to pick it up. But he says that, in fact, it is disliked. It's discouraged. When you see something on the floor, you want to pick it up. So just leave it.
I see.
Don't pick it up, yeah. Just leave it. It's discouraged or disliked to be picked up. Because you're going to get in trouble that you have to go declare, advertise it, try to find its owner. And it takes time to do so. So it's got some kind of responsibility. You don't want to fall into such difficulty. So you better leave it.
Sheikh, another question from one of our viewers, and that is it permissible to travel in the month of Ramadan for work or visitation purposes?
There's no objection, in terms of traveling in the holy month of Ramadan. You can travel, there's no issue with it. The makruh with regards to the traveling in this holy month is for the purpose of avoiding fasting. We have something mentioned in the books that al-firaru min as-sawm, he runs away from fasting. The one tries to avoid fasting because it's too hot, especially if it's in July, August, and you're in the Middle East, for example, 50 degrees, and you're fasting. So some people try to run away from fasting. The best way is what? To travel, basically, and avoid the whole month, for example. If you travel, خلاص, you have to break your fast. Unless you make the intention of iqamah, residing in that specific location, at least for 10 days. Then you have to fast and do the salah in full. But anyhow, if somebody wants to travel for work, for ziyarah, for pilgrimage, for umrah, there's no issue with it, that's fine. But the makruh, as I mentioned, is for the one who wants to run away from fasting for any reason.
I see. Sheikh, I've got a question. The viewer actually was quite wants a quick response to this one. Is it permissible to get a mortgage with riba on a house for investment purposes? So it's not that they're going to live in it. It's for an investment purpose. The price will go up. They can sell it and so forth. But obviously, the mortgage has interest on it. Is this acceptable? Is this allowed?
You see, this is a problem in terms of having the second house mortgage for investment. This issue has been discussed. For the first house, you're compelled. You can't pay rent, for example, or you want to pay rent. Then for the first house, your own house, you want to live in it. That's a different issue. But for the second house, investment, and you're not compelled to pay the interest and the riba, that's a problem.
Yes,
one should avoid it.
Understood,
So that's the problem. Yeah.
Excellent. Sheikhna, I am sent by my company during the holy month of Ramadan to another city, some 1,000 kilometers away, for 4 days for the purpose of work, and it is not permanent. Do I offer full or short prayers? And do I need to fast or not? And is there a difference concerning the case between the maraja?
Initially, this individual is going for a short trip, 3 or 4 days, to do a job and come back. We had similar question about some sisters going to a place of study to, I don't know,
take exams
and come back. 3 days exams and come back. That is really not considered to be as kathiru safar or somebody who often travels, because the one who travels often during the month, let's say 10, 12 days a month, he is traveling to and from work, to and from the study, for study purposes. Then they are kathiru safar, often travelers, in which they have to fast in full and pray as well, in full as well. But for such an individual who goes just for a short trip to do some kind of a job and come back, let's say he's a doctor, he has to go and see some patients outside the city for 3 days and come back, for whatever reasons. Also exams, the example we had. In this situation, they have to shorten their salah and not to fast. They must not fast. In other words, they are musafir, they are travelers, and it's not allowed for the traveler to pray full and fast. You are a traveler, you have to accept this concession. Allah is giving you this option, this opportunity, this concession rukhsa in which you have to basically oblige with it. You have to obey Allah Azza wa Jal. If He says fast, you have to fast. If He says don't fast, you shouldn't fast. We can't play with Allah's hukm and rules.
Yes.
According to our interests and notions and thoughts. We are limited in terms of understanding Allah's ahkam, the wisdom behind it. He is the legislator, so we leave it to Him. And we submit to Him. And that's why one of the meanings of Islam is submission. That I submit to Allah Azza wa Jal for the rules given. I don't want to disobey Allah and pray the way I want, or obey Allah on the way I want. I have to obey Allah on the way He wants, because He is the creator, and He knows that what is best for us in terms of worship, in terms of living, and so forth.
Yes. Shaykhna, is it normal these days for a woman to put on mascara and makeup? Oh, it is normal, no, is it? It is normal these days for a woman to put on mascara and makeup, even a little, for beauty, and then go out in front of people in the markets and streets. What is the ruling of such from His Eminence the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani?
The Sayyid mentions that this is not permissible, and this is, ala kulli hal, by our ulama mentioned that any kind of beautification or ornament that is, ala kulli hal, as the Sayyid mentions, is common view, in which can be seen in anyhow that she's having wearing makeup, lipstick and so forth, mascara, and that actually part of the adornments and beautification of the woman, that becomes haram. What she can do, she can cover it. You have the niqab or the burqa, cover it. Let's say she's going for a wedding, cover it. When you reach to the women only's wedding venue, then you take off, and that's, you join the other sisters and ladies. But you can't show this beauty in the front of the strangers or the non-mahram who do not relate to you in somehow. You know, the husband, sons, brothers, for example. You can't show them. So those who are not mahram to you. So, and that's mentioned in the Holy Quran. So you have to go back to the Quran and see how Allah Azza wa Jalla commanding the believers to abstain from looking at the opposite gender, haram, and to also conceal their beauty for their sisters, because this is it's better in terms of their purification. أطهر لقلوبكم. So it brings some kind of purity to the heart. Not only fasting brings purity, not only salah brings purity, but also refraining from some acts would bring purity and calmness and tranquility to the heart. That's important, because we receive by the means of I've mentioned the haqq and the in terms of the forbidden acts which are committed by the eyes, by the tongue, and by the hearing, or the ears and the hearing. So we have to make sure that these three means and others to receive only the permissible and halal and acceptable information, and not to receive the forbidden and the wrong information. We need to always, that's why we eat halal, food and morsels. We try to eat food which is halal. Likewise, we have to make sure we receive this halal through the ears and the eyes and the tongue as well, and even by the skin, the touch of the skin, to touch the halal, not the haram. You can't shake hand with the opposite gender who doesn't belong to you, like strangers,
Yes.
like others. And alhamdulillah, you can see with the situation now, nobody's shaking hand anymore, especially if there are strange people in terms of other people. So we have to learn lesson that we shouldn't basically commit these haram just because of excuses that we try to create. We have to go back to Allah Azza wa Jal in order to gain His forgiveness in this holy month, mercy, and to ask Allah Azza wa Jal to lift this bala and pandemic from the earth. بما كسبت أيدي الناس, the Quran says, due to what people have attained, these bala comes to the earth because of the people's wrongdoings and corruption and sins. which eventually brings the bala
Yes.
and balaya as well.
Indeed. Shaykhna, a few more questions coming in, mashallah, from the Facebook and from the YouTube as well. Nice and easy one for you, Shaykhna. If a lady is on a haid time during her menses cycle, can she fast?
Not at all.
Fabulous. And finally, one more, which is right over here. We know inhaling smoke from cigarettes will invalidate your fast. But how about other forms of smoke, like from vehicles, exhausts, or smoke machines? We know that there are different types of smoke densities. Will these also invalidate our fast if inhaled?
As mentioned before, the thick and dense smoke. Thick smoke. That's the criteria for it.
So like fumes, like
It has to be very thick.
make you cough.
Like as I've mentioned, the Moroccan or the Turkish hammam.
Yes.
Where there's a thick, you can't see each other.
Steam. Yeah,
Very
yeah.
thick steam, and the smoke you mentioned.
Same.
If it's thick, then it breaks. Which is the
Thank you.
shisha and
Yes.
cigarettes. It would definitely break the fast. So there's a
Awesome.
thick smoke going inside the throat.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Shaykhna. Thank you to all the viewers for joining us on this episode of Ahkam SOS. If you have a question you'd like to ask, send in via the WhatsApp, the email address. MashaAllah, we're getting questions from the Facebook Live and also from YouTube Live as well. Send in all your questions. It's our duty to answer them for you. Inshallah, me and the Shaykh will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. here on Imam Hussein TV 3. See you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.